What's up, guys? My name is Rick Ernst. I'm the director of Get Thrashed, the story of thrash metal. If you've already seen the documentary, thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. And if you're watching now, you're ready for the bonus footage. The bonus footage that was originally only available on the DVD. Now it's going to be available for streaming, and essentially this is different than the film. The film was a lot of music, a lot of photos, a lot of fast cutting. This is stuff that was left on the cutting room floor. This is dudes talking about thrash metal. Okay, that's what this is. When I was growing up, it was always cool, you know, especially on the weekends, we would get together, my friends and I, and we would talk about new bands we had heard on the radio or we had discovered at the record store during the week, kind of get together, have a listening session, play bands for each other, who discovered this band, who discovered that band. So hopefully that's what this is. It's sort of a learning session. It's a trip down memory lane. For fans of the genre, you know, maybe you're reminded of a band that you loved and you kind of forgot about. You know, for me, like Assassin was one of those bands that I hadn't listened to, even thought about in so long. And then this documentary, looking at the bonus footage, reminded me to go back and listen to some Assassin. You know, for some of you younger fans out there, hopefully this is an opportunity for you to discover bands that you never heard of before. You know, so this is maybe a roadmap, a little educational roadmap that you can check out some bands that you never heard of before. So for starters, let's go around the world and get thrashed.
German scene in the 80s was kind of a little, in the early 80s, it was pretty private, you know. There was no fucking place playing metal, so we had to do it ourselves. And in the beginning, we met at Schmier's garage.
Destruction was excellent musicians, excellent riffs, excellent everything.
Intricate speed, all-out thrash metal from Germany. The Germans do it great. I mean, German thrash metal is fantastic.
Destruction's a kick-ass band. Sentence of Death and Infernal Overkill, you know. Real early satanic fucking metal, you know, from Germany. That stuff's really good.
In the beginning, it was more like, yeah, we didn't play our instruments for a long time then. Just played guitar for 3 years back then. And you can hear that, I guess. And the band always did get a little bit better musical-wise.
Amazing technical band, and the guitar writing, the style that he writes his music is, you know, one of a kind. I mean, you know it's a riff that he came up with when you hear it. You know, it sounds like Destruction.
It's completely different music, I think. It's really thrash metal what they do. Really good music. I like them really much. But it's another style, you know. It's maybe Switzerland style.
I love Destruction, man. They're really killer. We got to tour with those guys.
We toured with them for 2 weeks, and I saw Mike in Germany and was like, Mike, what's up, dude? It was like he didn't even fucking remember me. It wasn't even a year ago.
Yeah, I'm professional. I'm sorry.
Destruction. That's a real personal one for me because I was their first fan in America. I wrote them a letter, and they couldn't believe that somebody from America wrote to them. So I started their fan club. And then from that point on, more and more people got into them. And they were just a really young, talented thrash metal band from Germany. And they were part of this whole wave of German bands that were coming out, but they stood head above some of the other bands just because they worked their work ethic. They worked really hard.
Smear from Destruction created his own sound. Like the guitars were much more technical, a lot of solos, high-pitched voice of Smear. It was like something completely different than Creator.
Schmier had an upper register, whereas it wasn't just the lower register that Sodom and Creator were using. He had more of a high-pitched scream.
And they brought the yeah! So hell yeah.
That scream that he has, yeah. Schmier's a great vocalist.
So are you ready to thrash it, boys? This one's called Thrash. Chill.
We were on tour with Destruction, and there was a problem with catering, but I just remember the Schmier going, "Tell them Destruction would not play if we don't get more pizza." And I just thought that was hilarious.
Brutal. It's right up our alley.
That's a real band right there.
But seriously, their songs are fucking awesome.
Infernal Overkill, man.
It's one of my all-time favorites, Infernal Overkill. That has some serious, all-out
riffs that are they just still hold up even now. Mike just came up with some amazing stuff there. Bestial Invasion, Thrash Attack, Black Death, the song Antichrist, great stuff.
In my opinion, Destruction was important because they had an image. You know, they had the bullet belts, and that made them special.
Bullet bandoleros, hair, just facing down, looking all tough and badass, leather jackets. It's like, oh, this is great. This is great.
Destruction rules. I love seeing like even videos now, and they're just all like getting older, but they still have like spikes and stuff, and they just like totally still rule. And like tons of other bands.
Those guys rule the stage and own the stage when they play. It's like they're such like a presence.
One of my favorite bands. Not only coming out of Germany, but one of my favorite thrash bands of all time.
One of the first bands that I heard that I really loved, it was on a horrendous demo tape, quality-wise anyway. I must have been 50th generation. Was Sodom way back when. I mean, probably about 1982, I think it was.
Sodom. Killer band. I mean, Sodom.
They were pretty influential.
Yeah.
Sodom is the most barbaric out of the three major German thrash bands. When you see the cover of their albums, it just rules so much that you have to listen to it.
They were a three-piece and very, very energetic. I think their sound is more like a little bit more like Venom, though. I mean, they have the distorted bass and all that. Good band.
The underground was getting going. There was something about them. They had the really crunchy riffs and those kind of vocals just really weren't prevalent back then. I mean, today it's probably tame, but back then it was really rough. And I was like, wow, there's something pretty wild. I mean, it was just heavy.
We always been in the scene since '82. We never changed the style, but we always try to get musical better. Writing better songs, writing better albums. But Sodom. That is what the people like Sodom, because Sodom always been in the scene.
And they evolved into what I think is a really, really good thrash band. I mean, some of them, Persecution Mania, Agent Orange.
I used to spin Sodom, Agent Orange every week. I had a college radio show when I was in school. It was just awesome, man,
Even up to today, I mean, I think they create great riffs. And like Exodus, great riffs live on. I mean, there's no substitute for great songwriting, and I think they had it.
Now we're going to talk about Assassin, probably my favorite German thrash band because they're a bunch of jokers. They have a song called Junk Food.
And Germans don't really joke around that much.
And that is very rare for a German to even laugh at your joke. I think I'm fucking hilarious. They don't laugh at my shit. Assassin has a song called Junk Food, and they name all their favorite junk foods in the verse. And the chorus goes, junk food, that is what we want. Kit Kat, what is it? The British waffle snack. Bazooka, the best chewing gum. 31, the USA ice cream. That's Baskin Robbins, 31. You got to catch that.
It's so bad. Junk
31.
food. We were going to cover it, but it was too long. The song's like,
it's
it breaks
a great
like 2
mid-pace
minutes.
rocker. It gets fast. It's got all the elements. Too long. Man.
Now, another German band, Tankard.
Tankard.
Why haven't we hit that one yet? It's on the list. Oh, we're jumping.
Let's have a beer for Tankard. Everyone drink a beer for Tankard.
That's right.
Beer. Yeah, they're more like a partying kind of band, from what I remember.
Beer metal.
Yeah,
definitely. Big influence on us.
Yeah.
Not really fans of Assassin or Tankard, but yeah, it's good bands.
I had like a clique of friends, and when we were drinking, we were listening to Tankard, of course. Of
course, yeah.
It was like a phenomenon that you had when you were sitting around with lots of several people.
Tankard is one of the most beer thrash bands ever, and for that, they are just amazing.
You can't go wrong with just songs about beer, ever.
Thrash and beer go together more than any two styles of music. Maybe Motorhead style stuff in beer, but just straight up thrash and beer is probably.
German people destroy beer, and it takes someone that really kicks ass to write songs about crushing beers.
A lot of people, when they think of German bands, they automatically think Destruction, Creator, and Sodom.
Which are good bands.
Very good, very good. No,
But
not putting them down
those
in any
bands
way.
are good too,
But
as
it's just,
well. All those
there were
bands.
more than that. Violent Force, Exhumer, they had all great records.
And they have some of the greatest thrash metal bands in the world. There's just a lot of great talent coming out of Germany. There's even a lot of new bands.
German bands are like Swedish bands are now. Like
You can hear it in
every
the vocals.
Swedish band can play great. Their production is great. They're like have that extra thing. Way back then, German bands were like that. Like every guitarist in a German band, if they're from Germany, you know the guitarist is going to be great.
It's always going to be a strong metal hold in the world. So if you really think you're a heavy metal fan, go to Germany and check out the scene there. It's awesome.
I live right to the border to Switzerland, and there was a big first metal things going on in the 80s. That was in Zurich. There was like metal disco, metal party each weekend. So everybody moved to Zurich that time. It was special, you know. And we met the guys of Celtic Frost there and Corona guys, and was nice scene there, yeah. Swiss is more than as you think, maybe.
Yeah, Coronas, that's
It's a
another
nice
one.
country.
They were a thrash band, but they had much more to offer than just thrash metal. Great songs, intricate playing. They had a Celtic Frost type sound a little bit, but they were very unique. They almost had a jazz type vibe going on too.
I think it's great that like how he can pull off those fucking bass riffs while singing all that.
I was just gonna say, Ron Royce is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He's playing some of the most ridiculous bass lines while singing, and it's pretty fucking unbelievable.
Corner,
Oh, yeah.
Punishment for Decadence,
Yeah.
man.
Crazy.
That's some
R.I.P.
cool fucking shit, dude. Hell yeah. Those guys real technical band.
Another three-piece thrash band, you know, which also made them unique. There weren't that many of them. And not that many bands come from Switzerland. You know, you had Celtic Frost, who had a big influence on the thrash metal scene. But Coroner were very good.
Hellhammer came out of Switzerland and evolved into Celtic Frost, and Hellhammer really influenced all the black metal kids, and because they were so sloppy and noisy that it didn't matter. They were just so scary.
That is the sickest shit you've ever heard in your life. Until you die, it's the sickest shit, literally. Okay.
To this day, it's still a huge influence on Obituary, Hellhammer. We look at a lot of the music that we write, and that's like the first band we think of. Listen to that riff we just came up with. That's Hellhammer, like written over 100 times.
And then, but they evolved. They got better musicianship eventually and became Celtic Frost. And around the world, I think that influenced a lot of bands.
The Frost, it's what can be said about them. They define the genre really. Even before with Hellhammer. There's Celtic
Gone
Frost.
from Hellhammer into Frost, yeah.
To me, the thrash metal movement started with Motorhead. I mean, they were the originator of what would be considered speed metal, punk meets metal, that whole attitude, yet instead of being dressed up like a punk, it looked metal, and it sounded metal, and it had the weight and the depth of metal.
If I had to pick one band to say which invented the scene, it would be Motorhead. To me, not specifically a thrash metal band, but to me that's where the speed and crossing metal really came from.
Well, I gotta say my favorite band, probably of all time, due to perseverance, commitment, standard, and value, will always be Motorhead. I don't know if you call them a thrash band, but they're most certainly, they transcend genre and are attracted to people within different genres, which is kind of cool. So they become almost like a centerpiece, like a focal point. Rock and roll, thrash, metal, this, that.
Motorhead, I agree, is probably reigns supreme over any fast music, because that was fast for the time, and that was just like, thrash is fast. That's no way around it. So Motorhead, I think, is more an influence on me, at least, than Metallica.
One of the biggest influences on all those fucking bands, you know. They've been doing the thing with the speed for a long time, you know, like their Overkill record and Ace of Spades and stuff.
Lemmy's he's a living legend. Jesus
I've heard
Christ.
somebody say it before, but I actually do believe that Lemmy actually is God.
Budweiser and Motorhead, that's the way we're all going down, man. You know, it's the way we started, the way it'll end.
It's the way it will end.
I think for my personal inspiration was Venom. Never any American bands, because I was really inspired by the new wave of British heavy metal bands like Venom, Raven, Tank, and all this stuff, you know.
We started the band and we were influenced by English bands like early new wave of British heavy metal. And then all of a sudden we discovered this band from England called Venom. And they were very important, you know, when we heard them, because we were not very good at playing our instruments. We were more like, you know, a band that just started out, and we couldn't do all the Maiden leads, you couldn't do all the Priest stuff. So when we heard Venom, we were like, yes, we can do that too.
Venom, you know, is I think one of the first groups to come out with just a blatant pentagram on their shirt and part of their logo, and they just made no bones about it. And I mean, they were really, they were, you know, a thrash band. They were so thrashy you could hardly even hear what they were playing, you know, more thrash than band probably, quite honestly. But they were really, they were, you know, the leaders. I mean, there probably wouldn't be Slayer without Venom, just like there wouldn't be Metallica without Motorhead.
I love Venom.
They were a big influence on what we wrote and what we did.
It's funny, they suck, and they suck bad, but you put them together and they rule.
Yeah.
Venom's badass. I love Kronos forever.
They had unique names, sort of like how Venom had, you know, 3 guys, Kronos, Abaddon, and Mantis. It's like, ooh, evil.
There's a certain time in your life when you're really impressed by Satan for some reason. And Venom is one of those bands that's just pure, barbaric, satanic thrash.
When Venom was going on stage and blowing things up, you know, it wasn't like going to see Kiss, who had makeup on. You were going to see something new that was eviler than Kiss. I mean, black metal was their first record. I mean, they opened up a door for a genre that's really big right now, the black metal genre.
When I first heard it, I was like, man, these guys are fucking seriously just banging away at their instruments. Jesus, they're just beating the shit out of them because it sounds so raw and like, you know, they fucked up the studio shoveling dirt onto the microphone to get that you know, so like the Buried Alive fucking sound, and they've done some pretty gnarly shit. So Venom is about as raw as you can fucking get.
There's another band called Raven, who were also from Newcastle, England, same place as where Venom was from.
I mean, Raven was still, you know, one of my favorite bands of all time. Back then was Raven. That was the heaviest, and I love that stuff.
I remember when Metallica and Raven came through, that was, I mean, everybody from the thrash movement was there. I mean, that was like the holy grail of tours at the time.
I think they were very responsible. I know specifically for us as Anthrax, a big influence on what we were doing when we first started. I probably first heard Raven like in '82 or something like that, and Anthrax was already together, and they were just a huge kick in the ass because they were playing things faster and crazier than anyone else at that time, as far as I was concerned.
Onslaught, the best thrash metal band to ever come out of England.
Search of Sanity, Onslaught is my favorite, and that's probably the best UK thrash band, I think.
The one thing about Onslaught was the imagery of their album covers. You know, right away, the first one was Power from Hell. You had this demon coming from a pentagram, rising from that.
The second album, The Force, is a must-have. If you're a thrash metal fan and you don't have that, go out and get it right now.
The follow-up, The Force, had a pentagram on it. So again, it's like all that imagery is something that is, you know, part of metal, part of thrash. Can't deny it. On their third and final release was In Search of Sanity. They had the singer for Grim Reaper on there, and I tell you, that release had some of the type of Metallica riffs that Metallica never wrote.
They had some problems down the line after that, which caused the band to break up. Killing Peace was their comeback record, which came out in '07. It's a great album, similar to Exodus and what they're doing now.
The most unique band, at least, is Sabbat UK, who really drew inspiration from all the surrounding mythology of Britain and, you know, photographed themselves in front of Stonehenge. And, you know, it's always going to be powerful stuff.
Sabbat, UK Sabbat,
Oh, yeah.
Dreamweaver, and
History
of Time to Come.
Yeah.
You go ahead. I don't know this one so well.
Interesting stuff there. Very well
Delving into
composed.
stories.
Yeah, very the
You guys have
lyrical
History of a
content
Time
on
to
it.
Come.
It's just
You might have
amazing. Like when I bought that album, I think it was in Amoeba over there in Hollywood.
Like I read the liner notes and just like all the lyrics, like, oh my God, he sings so much. How can he not run out of breath? But that band, they have some amazing song structures. I don't know. Personally, I think it's just their breakdowns are just amazing, and how they were able to practice all of that and get that down so well. It's just beyond me.
They didn't make a gigantic impact in America, but they did make a big influence in Europe and ended up sparking off black metal bands like Doom and Borgir and definitely Cradle of Filth, who I guess are pretty much responsible for bringing Sabbat UK back in the recent years. Denmark had an amazing toehold, a unique toehold in thrash because Sweet Silence Studios, where Flemming Rasmussen was making the classic Metallica albums, Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, is in Copenhagen. So they had at least, and also the great band Merciful Fate came from there as well. So they had Artillery and other bands like Des Exalt that were super high quality and had a little bit of a chance to get out and be seen by the world.
Merciful Fate was seriously like, I think they're seriously like one of the best bands of all time. Like just like by like everything they did, like every song they had. Like I don't think there's one song that like I remember like every Merciful Fate like riff like all through like every song that they've done. Like they're just like one of those bands that you just can't forget.
Technically one of the most amazing bands around. They could really play, but they could also be very intense and heavy.
Me and a couple buddies, we drove to go see Merciful Fate.
Wow.
So that was an experience to see them, and it just blew my mind.
Merciful Fate is one of my all-time favorite bands. They are great. King Diamond, the most unique metal vocalist out there. Great riffs, great songs. Controversial lyrical content. The whole devil thing, the whole satanic imagery that King Diamond portrays on stage.
Merciful Fate has a certain feel to it that's just eerie and like really just rock and roll and just the best riffs. It's amazing.
I think that a lot of musical influence that we get is from Merciful Fate.
I grew up listening to King Diamond and then found out about Merciful Fate later on, and that was the biggest influence I had.
I don't know if they weren't around, if bands wouldn't have evolved, but I do think they had an influence on the players. I know that Lars from Metallica and Dave Mustaine were very much into them.
Merciful Fate and King Diamond get put into the thrash scene a lot, but I consider them to be one of the biggest influences to the black metal scene. They have a dark eeriness, an evilness, but they also have some sort of like beauty with it too, and just total evilness combined with beauty. That's a lot like the black metal scene, but they get put in the thrash scene a lot, and their riffing is just thrash and awesome.
Sweden is a little bit immune to the influence of American thrash because they had their own extreme band early on, Bathory, way before anybody else. They really laid out, they took the inspiration of Venom and basically created modern black metal. And Bathory was as intense and fast and thrashy in their own way as anything coming out of the States. It was a lot less technical. But having that influence in Sweden definitely made the point that you could do something as a Swedish band and have your own unique style. It's kind of the same way that Merciful Fate gave that kind of confidence to Denmark. Sweden, though, did have a pretty well-developed thrash scene. They had bands like Menina Blade and Hexenhaus, Kazjurl, kind of a typical crossover band. But I think the Swedish thrash scene was really just a precursor to the Swedish death metal scene. And all of those bands, it's a sad case as far as thrash scenes go, or interesting, because it wasn't killed off by glam or by disinterest or like over commercialization. What happened is the thrash scene got as big as it could, and it was all like bands who could play, and they were into being pros. And then they were just decimated by this death metal scene that rose up out of the underground and out of the youth centers in Sweden. So there were even a lot of early thrash bands just quit and folded and became bands like Grave or even Dissection. John Nordveit's early band was called Rabbit's Carrot and was a thrash band, classic textbook thrash band. And then there was actually a schism between thrash kids and death metal kids until the thrash scene was seen as outdated by the early 90s. But all of those like chunky syncopated rhythms definitely live on in the Swedish groove, and the high speed and the fast like dual guitar work that you'll hear in like Testament or something. In a way, it was a precursor to the Gothenburg sound. They both kind of took the same thing from old Iron Maiden records and approached it in different ways. Reading Norwegian fanzines in the 80s and having friends there, I think that the Norwegian music scene was the extreme scene was so puny that they didn't initially make the kinds of distinctions that later became, that kind of like suffocated black metal eventually. I mean, the hairs get split so fine now, but during the initial thrash days, during the golden age of thrash, you had like some deathly bands and thrash bands and black metal bands in Norway coexisting because that's all there was. And even the great Norwegian fanzine Slayer Mag billed itself as a thrash mag early on. So where black metal was coming from, like the dirty side of thrash, like Celtic Frost and Hellhammer and Venom, and took more influence from early death metal, it also wouldn't have existed. The thing that really initially kicked off the scene was bands like Creator, especially the German speed metal bands had a giant influence on all Norwegian extreme music. Well, Sepultura are the best known of a huge Brazilian thrash scene. The first Western bands to go down there among them were Exciter and Venom. So maybe in other places, if Bon Jovi is the first hard rock band that your country sees, you're going to have a lot of Bon Jovi clones. And since Brazil saw Exciter and Venom, you just had a lot of satanic madmen running around. And Sepultura were little kids when they formed, like 13, 14, 15 years old. And there were already all these other bands like Dorsal Atlantica and MX and Volcano. And they were like rushing to play like fast, crazy. They were so far separated from the European bands that they tried to make up what they lacked in technique, they had in energy. If you go to Brazil to this day, the thrash scene that was started in the 80s still continues. These bands like Antares and Sarcophago are now like legend and have spawned generations and generations of Brazilian thrash. There's a 6-story mall in Sao Paulo that's every single floor has a record store or t-shirt stall that basically deals in extreme metal stuff. Of course, there's the Sepultura fan club is in this place too. And it's really an incredible scene. It's probably the only mall in the world where you can walk outside and buy artillery. The bootleg DVD dealers on the streets sell like Artillery and and Merciful Fate and really obscure old like Forbidden and Heathen, just obscure thrash DVDs. It's pretty wild.
Mortal Sin were an Australian band. Not that many bands come from Australia. They had a couple of records out. Mayhemic Destruction was their first one.
Mortal Sin,
Ooh,
Mayhemic
Australia.
Destruction,
Yeah.
dude. Hell yeah. We got that Faces of Mayhem video from '89. That's a cool band. Also, didn't part of them were in Slaughterlord, weren't they?
Yes, Slaughterlord.
Yeah. But yeah, Mortal Sin's a cool fucking band.
They kind of had a Metallica type sound.
And a lot of people, I don't know, expected Australia or not, you know what I mean? But they definitely, that was cool, by the way. They mentioned them in the documentary.
Mortal Sin and Hobbs Angel of Death. Can't forget about
Hobbs
that.
Angel of Death, yeah, dude. Hell yeah.
Mention them Australian bands.
But it just goes to show you how far thrash metal really went. It wasn't just Germany and the United States. It went all the way to Australia. So that just shows you the importance of thrash metal and how great of a genre it really is.
Thrash and speed metal were huge in Europe, so France wasn't immune to that. They had tons of fast bands. More speed metal, I'd say, than thrash. More like really fast heavy metal, like Iron Maiden at double speed. You had bands like ADX, Morsur. More on a bedroom level were Aggressor and Witches. Kind of coming out of that era, not so fast, but inspired by all the thrash bands was Trepon and Pal from Paris, who later became kind of a ministry techno industrial band in the 90s, but with their very beginning were more like Voivod and really abrasive and super cool. Japan's an interesting place because they had really an extreme music scene that also came from hardcore, and they had, you know, metal bands like Loudness and EZO that had like a crazy over-the-top image. And in America and in Europe, the hardcore scene and the metal scene came together, and the metal scene kind of took over, and the hardcore scene went metal. But in Japan, it was the opposite, where the hardcore scene absorbed the extreme metal scene. So you had all these thrash bands like SOB and Gudon and Casbah, of course, the mighty Casbah, that started out metal and became more and more hardcore. United, Rose Rose, really super extreme, over-the-top bands, and played an important role in the birth of grindcore. SOB especially were good friends with Napalm Death and brought Napalm Death over at a very early time. So they went in a more underground direction, and that's still where the Japanese thrash scene is today, with all the third, fourth, 15th generation bands like Barbados and Sabat.
Canada's, man, you need to do a whole film on Canadian thrash, dude.
Canadians, they make like more like of a raw thrash, and it's usually really technical, really impressive.
Canada, very,
Especially
very
Infernal
underrated
Majesty.
when it came to their bands.
Yeah.
Very, everybody I guess, totally avoided them. They had so many great bands. Sacrifice with the release Torment and Fire
and For
Razor,
Determination.
Evil Invaders, Infernal Majesty, None Shall Defy, Slaughter, Strapato, and not the glam Slaughter, for those of you who don't know.
Fuck
no,
of death.
Canada really had their own scene, and they had wicked bands too.
Exciter, because they were kind of first in those metal-looking covers, Violence and Force and Heavy Metal Maniac.
Exciter were a Canadian Motorhead. They were heavy, they were fast.
Exciter was a three-piece, wore metal and studs, but their unique angle was the drummer was the singer. And, you know, you didn't see much of that.
Violence and Force is a great record. If I was going to a desert island and I could only bring 10 CDs with me, Violence and Force would be one of them.
The energy in Exciter, like just the energy that they like portray through the music is just like, it's pretty fucking.
Exciter is really fucking raw, and that's one of the things that I like about it the most.
Exciter has some of the best lyrics of thrash bands. Heavy Metal Maniac, like, come on. How much more straightforward can you get than that? It's just fucking awesome.
Razor was another band from Canada. You know, they were fast, kind of like Slayer, all out speed.
Razor was just non-stop thrash. Everything was about violence and killing. All of that was just, you know, just from custom killing. My favorite release, Violent Restitution, Evil Invaders.
There's no reason to be pissed off in Canada. You're in Canada, you got free healthcare. That band sounds so goddamn pissed off. And they, I mean, more traditional metal, but then they turned into more of a thrash kind of band, like in '88 with Violent Restitution. That's like my favorite record they did. Razor's my favorite.
Gotta have a Razor record, whether it's Executioner Song, Evil Invaders, or Malicious Intent, or Violent
They're
Restitution.
all very good. Or if you're lucky, Armed and Dangerous. I
If
you
you're
can find
lucky,
that.
if you're lucky. Sacrifice is a great fucking band.
This guy's the one that introduced me to their.
I love Sacrifice. Torment and Fire is awesome. Necronomicon, you know, the title track, even though I have my fucking shirt, it's all misspelled and shit. They did it wrong. But, you know, that fucking record, Warrior of Death, all that stuff's really badass shit. Just full energy. And the fucking dive bombs that those guitar players are doing is unreal.
Oh, yeah.
I toured with them when I was in Death.
Sacrifice was
Toured with
amazing.
Fuck you.
Amazing,
I had
man.
their album before you toured with them in Death.
Sacrifice, I just got a Sacrifice CD recently, and I think it's because this thrash resurgence that's happening. People have been giving me bands that I haven't heard before. Sacrifice kicks ass. Awesome production. It's raw, but like full, you know? And it's just aggressive. It's like if Venom was amazingly technical musicians.
For Determination was my first introduction with them, and then I did a little digging backwards. That was a great, you know, Pyrokinesis was always like stuck in my head all the time. But I unfortunately I never got a chance to see him.
I never saw him either, and I think they're playing again And they know about us, so what's up, man?
Hit us up.
Hit us up. Let's play, man. Sacrifice.
do it.
Annihilator was a mid-'80s band. They weren't just all-out thrash metal. They had a speed metal influence. Jeff Waters, the great guitar player. He was actually asked to play with Megadeth, but he wanted to stay in his own band.
That guy is one of the best guitar players I think I could ever think of, especially for thrash.
It started off as like, it was a one-man band. It was Jeff Waters.
It's amazing that he played everything but the drums on Alice in Hell, and the way he weaved the guitars and bass lines together is absolutely amazing. Alice in Hell is one of our favorite records of probably of all time.
Alice in Hell was, a classic in the sense that it was clean, crisp riffing, sort of like Metal Church was. And, it still holds up.
Anvil are like spiritual forefathers of the whole thrash movement. Their Metal on Metal album had so much amazing double bass drum work, like the great song 666 and Mothra. I think Anvil's Metal on Metal album is the most intense heavy metal album right before the dawn of thrash metal. And it's really like the point of departure.
Anvil was Canadian, but they weren't really a thrash metal band. They were more of a heavy metal type sound, like a Judas Priest.
Anvil. You could make a whole movie about Anvil.
So there you have it, a look at some of the scenes around the world that were big in the 80s and that were instrumental in helping the thrash metal scene blow up and become a worldwide phenomenon. For me, Ian Christie was sort of my teacher in a lot of ways with the international scene. When you look at the Japanese scene, I really was not familiar with many of those bands. Ian Christie kind of schooled me. Another interesting thing looking back at the bonus footage is you see bands like Municipal Waste, Skeleton Witch, Rumpelstiltskin Grinder, bands that were not really that prevalent or in Get Thrashed, the main film at all. But here they appear in the bonus footage. And the reason for that is because we filmed those guys towards the end of the cycle. Get Thrashed, the documentary, was kind of sort of almost finished at that point, and we really had a tight time frame, and we had our edit together, our film together. So as much as those interviews were magnificent, especially Municipal Waste, when you take a look at some of those sound bites, but we just could not fit them in the actual film because it was locking picture. So here's an opportunity to take a look at some of those bands, their commentary, and as we get into the U.S. scene now, you can hear some more from those guys. And also the U.S. scene, of course, was what most people think of when they think of thrash metal, because there were so many different cities around the country that were just blowing up and that were really spearheading the thrash metal movement. Of course, the Big Four, came out of that. And what this is basically diving deeper than the Big Four, which were explored in the main film, Get Thrashed. So in the bonus features, here are some extra scenes around the U.S., and here are some extra bands, a lot of different bands and a lot of underground bands that you did not hear of in the main film. So take a look. Get Thrashed, the U.S. scene.
Check it out, man. I think you feel the same way. Every time I put on this fucking Headbangers Ball, I see fucking bullshit like Poison, Motley Crue, and I bet your favorite's Bon Jovi, huh?
Testament were first known as Legacy. Steve Souza was the first singer for Testament, who is nicknamed Zetro. Went on to sing with Exodus.
They originally had the name The Legacy, and it was actually Billy Milano who named them Testament because we had a problem. The record was about to come out as the band was going to be called Legacy, and I remember that somebody had trademarked it already, and we found out real late in the game. So they were knocking around ideas, and I just remember Billy one day calling up and being like, "Testament!" And all of a sudden it was just like, yeah, why not?
They're not Legacy anymore. They're Testament now, and they've got a new album out. Yes, Testament. And here's some of the guys down at the station talking to Rampage Radio, KUSF.
And we're listening to the new album, right?
Yeah.
The new album. And, oh no, there he is, it's Dave Lombardo. It's Dave Lombardo.
great band, man. I've been a fan ever since their demo, you know, since they were called The Legacy already back then. I was into tape trading and everything.
Testament's a
God
huge
bless Chuck
influence
Billy.
on the sound of Shadows Fall ourselves. Like, yeah, honestly, like, they're just amazing.
I guess they kind of influenced us a lot, to be honest, because when they came out with The Legacy, it was like, yeah, this is fucking badass.
I saw Testament at Flashes in Cleveland, and I actually got to work the show. I was like a loader. I was like 16 years old. So I actually loaded and, like, you know, helped the band bring in all their equipment. And then, like, they played, and, like, I got to go in the pit and stage dive the whole time. So it was like, you know, I got my special treatment because I helped load the equipment.
I mean, there was something special about them. I mean, Chuck Billy's powerful vocals.
If it's about extremes, Chuck is extreme. He can do the lowest of lows and the highest of highs and stay clean on both ends. And it always blows my mind to hear that he still can do it this many years later.
The strength of Chuck Billy's vocals. Alex, you know, contrasted to Alex Skolnick's playing was just liltingly haunting.
Yeah, they had an amazing, Alex Skolnick was an amazing guitar player.
He was more of like a virtuoso player, and that's what I think got Testament more notice was Alex's playing.
You know, everyone talked about Alex Skolnick, their lead player, who was just phenomenal and just super precise and technical, but their rhythm player back there in the shadows, Eric Peterson, was just, he had the most brutal riffs out of anybody. Like, his riffs just made you bang your head.
I mean, from the drums to the bass, the guitar, everything. That was just like insane songs.
They totally had the whole package, and when you went and saw Testament live, it was just like, it was brutal, the whole show. They were one of my favorites.
There's always been a lot of talk about the big four, you know, Slayer, Metallica, Anthrax, Megadeth, but it could always be said that if you add two more to that, call it the big six, Testament would be one of those, as well as Exodus, I say.
In the Bay Area, there were a lot of great bands. I mean, another one of my favorite bands from back in that time were Death Angel.
Death Angel, another great band.
Yep. Yeah, that's a Bay Area band you need to start mentioning more.
Death Angel needs more props.
Death Angel were definitely an important band in the East Bay. They were the next generation after Metallica and Exodus.
Death Angel, you know, a group of Filipino cousins who were all basically in high school. I think the drummer was about 12 when they did their first demo and 15 when they did the album.
Kill As One was a really good demo. It was a three-song demo produced by Kirk Hammett, Metallica, of course.
I remember meeting Andy, the drummer, and he was an excellent drummer. And I remember being so blown away by the fact that he was only 12 years old.
I remember them opening for Metallica at the Kabuki on Ride the Lightning tour, and Andy was in 6th grade. It's like, think about that. I gotta hurry up and do my homework because I got a gig with Metallica tonight.
Death Angel were one of Cliff Burton's favorite bands. He loved Death Angel. He thought they had great tunes. You know, there was a certain amount of complexity to their music that was really great. There was a certain amount of melodicism to their songs that was really, really great. That, you know, bands like Exodus didn't have, or Testament.
Death Angel, to me, was always probably the more progressive of any of them. They always had that musicianship that always seemed to be just a cut above everything else.
Great musicians, you know, really tight band, man. They deserve a lot of respect.
When I listen to Death Angel today, it's just like I totally appreciate their music. They're awesome. But back then, we were just looking at any reason to snipe at their music, you know? Oh, this is that, and that's because of that, and they're weak because of this, and we're way more heavier. And I mean, we'd play a show with Death Angel anytime, just so that we could go out there and, okay, we're going to go out there and we're going to show we're better than Death Angel. I know that they're in their dressing rooms thinking the same thing. And you talk to them today, when I talked to Rob and stuff today, we laugh about that because it was really, that was our competition.
Well, I just dug him. I think Mark's a great singer and a great frontman, and the band just, you know, great band.
Death Angel had the combination of that hard sound and then that same melodic vocalist.
Their look and their lyrics and even the music kind of contradicted the name of the band. I mean, here you had Death Angel, you know, right away. Oh, it's going to be good. And it was good. It was thrash metal, but it was melodic.
Death Angel were definitely more melodic, but, you know, just as heavy. And they totally had great melodic thrash metal songs.
Frolic Through the Park, I was all about that record. the onboard song was all over Headbangers Ball. We were actually playing that at Soundtrack the other day. We were butchering it, but.
In 1990, Act 3 was out, and the album was doing really good. They were getting regular rotation on MTV. And they were on Geffen Records. Everything looked really good. And then the Winnebago like crashed and tipped over.
Yeah, I mean, we got in an accident, and what happened was just the driver fell asleep and just kind of swerved off the road and overcorrected when he came to. And bus flipped over twice and slid on its side for like 200 feet. And it was just, it was horrendous, basically. You know, Andy got really badly injured, and, you know, I got slightly injured. It was, you know, it's definitely the biggest, it's pretty much the worst day of my life. So I just, you know.
It led to the end of our band.
Absolutely.
After the initial wave of East Bay bands like Exodus and Testament, more bands started coming out of the woodwork from the South Bay and the North Bay. The South Bay had Forbidden, Violence.
Violence, I just can't describe how much I love them. I mean, Eternal Nightmare is, if you don't have Eternal Nightmare, you're not a thrash metal fan. It's like not having Kill 'Em All, not having Bonded by Blood.
Yes, definitely. I think that band that's probably my favorite Bay Area band.
The first Violence record is definitely, you know, a huge influence on us. And Violence as a band in general is a huge influence.
One thing about Violence, when Rob Flynn came into the band, Phil Demo was in place, and he was sort of like the driving force in the band. Violent lyrics, just Eternal Nightmare was their debut. Great stuff. Great production.
Violence were probably the best live band in the Bay Area. They just put on a high energy intensity show, which would really got them a buzz before they ever got signed.
Their shows were amazing. Just a lot of slam pits, real violent slam pits.
Let me give you a Violence pit story. We were playing this song, and these kids started fighting in front of us. And there was probably about 5 of them just fighting. And we knew if we stopped playing, they would probably stop fighting. But the fact that we just continued to play the music, and it was like this adrenaline was being pumped into them, these dudes just kept beating on each other, and then when the song was over, the fight ended. That was probably one of my better thrash pit stories that I could remember. I mean, yeah, we've played shows in clubs where kids did stage dives and landed on their skulls and busted their skulls open, and an ambulance came, and they took them off in a stretcher, but you know what, the show never stopped, and I didn't even know about it until after the show, when the security guard that tossed them off the stage was bragging about it.
The Bay Area always had a traditionally crazy crowd to begin with, and Violence with songs like, you know, Kill on Command, you know, and Bodies on Bodies.
I loved Violence. I still love them to this day. Awesome stuff, really heavy, really aggressive, really violent subjects. They were truly violence.
We wanted to be the hardest, you know, we wanted to be the most on the edge. We were always like, no, we're going to be heavier than any of them. And it was always in your face kind of an attack for us. It was great.
Sean's vocals were unique in the sense that, like how Caton had that cadence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sean would have a da 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 da. That was his vocal delivery, and it worked.
Vocally, it's one of my favorite.
Great, man.
Yeah, favorite vocals too ever.
Violence.
It gets me stoked.
They cover all the issues too. Very controversial band.
I wish they'd do a new album. But, you know, Rob has this other band, you might have heard of them, called Machine Head, and Phil's in it too.
Rob left Violence and went on to form Machine Head. Now Phil is with Machine Head right now, and they're playing those intricate songs, and Machine Head's another great group that, you know, they've come from a thrash metal background, but they're not really playing thrash metal. But you have 2 key players there that have the ability to play the fast stuff that Violence was doing, but now they're molding it into what Machine Head is, which is not all-out speed, intricate playing, and I wish they'd do a Violence medley on stage.
Forbidden Evil, Bay Area thrash band. Debut release was called Forbidden Evil because they eventually shortened their name to Forbidden. Rob Flynn was in the early version of this group. Another 5-piece, like Death Angel, also like Violence.
Forbidden was more of a progressive, like really just a lot of thought put into the song structure, really complex stuff, like really amazing riffs, really good vocals, really good singing, really good lyrics.
Forbidden, great band. Why? It's just good music, you know. It has brain, but it has fucking balls too, you know. Just really interesting. I was blown away by the two guitar players and by the lead vocals. At that point, I never heard something like that type of thrash with that type of guitars. Real intricate stuff. The debut, you know, that had a lot of cool stuff. March into Fire,
high-pitched
Chalice of
vocals, too.
Blood.
Yeah.
That's a fucking rad song, you know. And the vocal style, I think, you know, he had a good range. Russ had a good range.
Russ Anderson, don't forget good old Russ. He sang he had a good falsetto.
Live, he could hit the high notes that he actually put on the album. So I was blown away by that he actually could sing exactly the same as on the record. A lot of energy on the stage. He would run around like crazy, you know, bang his head, like real thrash metal.
Love Forbidden. That's the high vocals right there. That's speed metal at its finest. One of the times, I guess the Ultimate Revenge 2, they open up that show and they smoke every band on there. I'm sorry.
Forbidden made their mark. They did put out, like I said, some good quality releases, but ultimately they did break up in like the early 90s.
Possessed were wonderful in that they took that satanic side of thrash metal, you know, the side that was forged by Venom and Merciful Fate. They took that and just totally went to the extreme with it.
Possessed, oh yeah, we liked them a lot. That was like some of our influence.
Possessed to me is actually, in an odd way, my introduction to death metal.
They were like the one band that just like broke all boundaries on extreme metal. Like you hear Metallica and all this other stuff and Merciful Fate, when you heard Possessed, it was just over the top of everything.
They actually coined the phrase death metal.
To this day, though, when you talk to Swedish death metal fans or people in Florida, Possessed is still, you know, one of the most respected bands ever from that for that movement.
Possessed, fucking Seven Churches and Beyond the Gates. Eyes of Horror kicks ass as well, but those first two are masterpieces, both of them. I don't care. Some people say Beyond the Gates isn't that good. They don't know what they're talking about.
Do not know.
Seven Churches, you know, set the fucking that set the standard in '85 for metal like that. I think is the most extreme thing. And Beyond the Gates was a great fucking follow up. You know,
Just Jeff Becerra's vocals alone, just groundbreaking and original for that time.
The vocals. I mean, it was like, "Ugh." I mean, we hear a lot of that nowadays, but Possessed was, I would say, the earliest band to really do that from start to finish, from song one to the last.
Possessed were a very important band. The funny part of Possessed's family tree is that Larry Lalonde of Primus was a member, and he tries to keep that quiet, I guess.
You know, Larry went on to jam with Primus of all bands. He also was in a band called Blind Illusion, also another band from the Bay Area.
Heathen was another Bay Area band. Breaking the Silence was their first release. I kind of think they got, you know, shuffled away because they weren't really a big name, but they were a really, really good group. They weren't all out speed. They had some slower songs, but they definitely had a lot to offer, you know, to thrash metal fans.
Heathen wasn't really a thrash band. They were more of a power metal band, and they came a little after that period, and they were so good, but they were kind of overlooked because they were different. They weren't your typical thrash band. They were amazing musicians.
I don't know, just something about the guitar work in that band was just super, just clean yet heavy. Just, I don't know. It's like a better And Justice for All, I think.
Lee is now in Exodus, so they did have some good players in the group who have moved on, but Breaking the Silence is a key release for them.
Heathen, Breaking the Silence. It's a good fucking record, a good debut they had.
I think they had their whole thing, different thing going on there. They had a different take on everything that was going on.
Heathen could really kick your ass, but you had to pay attention.
Talk about the Bay Area thrash scene. Why was it so special? What made it so
Well,
great?
if you weren't here, you missed out on a lot.
So you just might as well
You
forget
can
about
really-
it. Oh, man.
No, it was a really kind of special time, you know. I mean, you had to be here to kind of grow up and witness the whole thing, you know. Whoever was around and was lucky enough to witness this. I mean, it was incredible. You know, it was something new, it was something fresh. It was something like, well, you know, like people were saying, what is it in the water? You know, I don't know what it was, but it was definitely special. You know, I mean, I feel lucky because I came all the way from Russia. You know, my parents. I mean, you know, in the younger days. So I feel lucky just to be a part of it.
Dark Angel, great LA band. Their nickname was Caffeine Metal.
I love Dark Angel. It has a different, unique feel than a lot of the other thrash bands. It's just evil and just fast paced and just like awesome drum fills that just add so much to like just the pounding rhythm. It's one of the higher energy old school thrash bands.
Darkness Descends was actually their second record. They had an album out before that called We Have Arrived, but Darkness Descends was their first release on Combat.
Darkness Descends, that actually hit the Billboard charts, and I was like, wow. I'm like, Thrash has arrived. I mean, it was incredible, and for a band that heavy to get on to Billboard, it was like, wow, and it was great stuff.
Darkness Descends is probably my top 3 records, the thrash records that are huge inspirations to me. When I first heard that record, I totally lost my mind. It was totally amazing. It changed my life, for sure.
Darkness Descends was like the most brutal drumming I've ever heard in my life. When I
Mean
first heard
Gene
that record.
Hoglan.
My God.
Man.
It's like the first time I heard like really extreme double bass, just the sickest drumming that I've ever heard in my life.
Mean Gene Hoglan, the Mean Gene Caffeine Machine. This guy is a drumming maniac.
They had a lot of riffs in their songs, and which made the songs like even more intense because they didn't stay on one riff for too long.
One thing I distinctively remember that Combat Records did, they issued, it was either Leaf Scars or Time Does Not Heal, I forget which, but they issued a sticker on the album that said, this album contains over 245 riffs. And that was it. That was it. It didn't say this contains a hit single, Leaf Scars, or this. It didn't say anything. It just said this contains over 245 riffs. And I'm like, well, we all ate that up. And it was heavy.
They had so much speed, yet they had the technicality that really wasn't around. The production was great. It was very clear to hear all the musicianship in there.
For me, it was Slayer, Dark Angel, and Exodus, and that's all that really mattered. I mean, I love Metallica, and I'll never deny that I loved Metallica. I don't really care that much anymore. But if Slayer, Exodus, and Dark Angel, that was it.
Dark Angel, they lasted about 4 or 5 releases, but they definitely made a mark, especially in Los Angeles. The thrash scene in Los Angeles, they played everywhere. Hyrax from Orange County or surrounding areas. At the time, Caton, black guy, singing metal band. But we didn't see much of that. We didn't see much of that in thrash. There was no major racism. There was nothing that said, oh, what's he doing? That really wasn't going on all that much. But that was something that stood out. Plus, Caton sang in a certain cadence that was unique also at the time.
Well, Caton is an incredibly charismatic and notable frontman. Like he has a presence that you cannot deny.
Thrash metal.
I think when you're first getting into music like that, the first few times you hear vocalists that have such a high voice, you're kind of taken back. Like, what is this? Like when you hear King Diamond or Hyrax or something, just like really high vocals. But once you get used to it, it's just awesome.
The band was thrash, not when it first started, but it gradually grew into a thrash metal band. They did Bombs of Death on Metal Massacre 6, I think, and that was like a quick 2-minute burst of energy.
Actually, I got into Hyrax because a punk rock friend of mine liked them. He didn't like any metal, he just liked Hyrax. And that's how I heard about them. And he hated metal, loved Hyrax, and they kicked ass.
Caton was another one of those members that really was a go-getter, is a hustler. He would send out demos, send out live tapes. He was around in the scene a lot. He did a lot, not only for his band, but for the scene, putting a different mark on the thrash metal scene here in Los Angeles.
It was like pure energy. It didn't seem like they were so concerned about having like fancy production as much as just kicking ass,
like it was like the first time I heard Hyrax. I was like riding in the van, like pumping my fists. So like it got me really
They
stoked.
cover SSD too, Glue, man.
Yeah.
Sick cover.
And I was driving even more aggressively than usual while listening to it.
They're still going. They go and play in Mexico.
We
Like
played
they're
with
big
them.
in Mexico.
We played a show with them in
Weird.
Mexico.
They are, dude. Seriously. Every time you go down there to play a gig, there's a poster. And like, you know, bands that are huge here have a little poster in the venue, like they're coming here. Hyrax will be like this giant thing. Hyrax.
But one thing with Caton, he always stuck to his guns, and he continuously reinvented himself. And I'm really happy that he's still at it, 20 years later.
Agent Steel were a Los Angeles power metal band, not really thrash metal, more speed metal.
Agent Steel were super cool for having like a crazy singer that believed in UFOs and sang in like a crazy high Rob Halford voice, higher than Rob Halford, while the band was basically a speed metal band. They were probably better loved in Europe than in America, and also a classic speed metal versus thrash. I don't. The distinction is hard to see sometimes, but when you're basically playing Iron Maiden at double speed, that's textbook speed metal. Agent Steel.
Skeptic's Apocalypse is a key release for them, as well as Unstoppable Force.
We're pretty familiar.
Unstoppable Force.
Skeptics, Mad Locust Rising.
Yeah. We played at Milwaukee Metal Fest with Agent Steel one year, and what I remember from them, they had really awesome weed. That's probably like the only aspect that I remember. It was really good, yeah.
Bada boom.
What do you say out there in New York tonight, huh? You aggressive bunch of motherfuckers, you are. You're a bunch of dirty bastards, and we like that. 20 fucking years for this band. 20 fucking years for a lot of that crowd out there, huh?
If Iron Maiden sounded like galloping horses, Overkill sounded like a stampede, or a locomotive going the speed of a Concorde jet. It was just.
Overkill were definitely a more straightforward metal band compared to Anthrax and Nuclear Assault. They didn't really have like a hardcore influence at all. I mean, from Black Sabbath to Judas Priest, those were their main influences.
In the early days, our first European tour was with Overkill. Good friends of ours, great band.
First time we played L'Amour's Brooklyn. I think it's the first time we ever met those guys, and partying with, both Bobbies and Dee and Rat Skates. It was just totally killer. Both coasts kind of meeting, for the first time.
They had the class and the licks of Iron Maiden. They had this great charismatic singer, Bobby Blitz, who sang in a high, shrill voice, but then the music was just punishing. It was all rhythm.
I loved Overkill, man. I was a huge, a lot of people gave them crap for the singing, but I thought it fit really well with what they were doing,
It's my favorite band ever. I fucking love Bobby Blitz. Love some Bobby Blitz. Best frontman that ever has graced the stage of thrash metal.
It's a love-hate relationship with that band with a lot of people. It's either, oh my God, Overkill's amazing, or I can't stand his voice, or whatever. It's one of the two, but you can't deny they had some fucking badass songs.
Taking Over was a great record. That's when they really started to get popular. Had some MTV footage.
Elimination, Hello from the Gutter, huge riffs.
Years of Decay, such a good record.
Horoscope to this day is still one of my favorite albums, man. It's a great album.
He's the Overkill freak, so.
I own every single record and still continue to buy them, regardless. Yeah, they're just like Slayer.
They're another band sort of like Slayer that really hasn't changed their sound much over the last 20 years, and I think the people who are fans of them really love them specifically for that reason.
Overkill has been around since '81, putting out stuff, all kinds of demos and albums and all this. And not only that, I give them credit because after putting out so many albums, not once did they put out an album that they, changed direction and got all, no, every album consistently great.
They do great at what they do, their style of music. And that's, I think, why it gave them their longevity, because they have stuck to their style of music like us,
I give that respect. I do give that respect because you give your crowd what they want. You maybe move them along a little bit. You may, but Overkill's, you know, if you're an Overkill fan, you're going to get what you want.
It's almost like people want to overlook them, you know, and I think that's a huge mishap.
It totally pisses me off that a lot of times I hear people talking about thrash bands and all this. They don't even mention Overkill. I mean, they just get totally overlooked, or it's like a little blurb or whatever. They're like, oh, you like Overkill, whatever. I'm like, have you heard it? Have you ever been to an Overkill? Have you heard an Overkill album?
They've always done what they do, and they do it so well. And they probably did not get. Probably all of us don't think that they got, you know, They didn't get exactly what they deserved. I mean, Overkill's amazing. Go see them live. It's still, to this day, is unbelievable.
Overkill, a great band. I mean, Bobby, you know, Blitz, great singer. He's still doing it. You know,
him and
I mean,
Dee Dee are still.
Dee Dee's just killer.
Yeah, they're still keeping it going. That's, you know, just goes to show you the longevity of bands that are able to, you know, last this long and still do festivals and still do records and people go get them. It just goes to show you the strength of thrash metal.
Nuclear Assault fucking rules! Nuclear Assault!
I really like Nuclear Assault a lot. I thought Nuclear Assault just really put out some great songs, great lyrics, and just great music overall.
They were another band that you could say from New York that had their own innovative sound, you know, and innovative style.
Nuclear Assault, that was one of my favorite bands early on, because I listened to a lot of hardcore and thrash, and they were kind of like that crossover point.
They took a background in heavy metal and brought it to hardcore and brought that back to metal fans.
They were probably the most important of the Brooklyn metal scene's crossover into hardcore.
So many bands I could see wanted to be like Nuclear Assault. They were the most influential East Coast band for a while, you know, for the thrash kids that weren't into quite as hardcore as you know, like SOD or something like that.
Awesome. Nuclear Assault, a lot of energy. Kind of reminded me of us a little bit. You know, we were kind of that same kind of speed metal, hard vocals.
I liked their riffs, and I liked what's his name, John Connolly. His singing style. It was kind of high pitched, but not so it turned wimpy. It was kind of cool.
They were so cool, man. John Connolly's voice was deadly.
Yeah.
You had Dan Leclercq, just giant monster of a gorgeous human being, you know, just a great guy.
What can you say about Danny? Danny's been in about 100 bands, all heavy bands.
He's one of the most influential people out there.
Danny Leclercq is probably the most metal dude on earth, and so committed to metal. We were lucky enough to play his wedding party at CBGB, so it was just pretty cool. But dude, Nuclear Assault, they're back together now, and I mean, you can't go wrong.
Those guys they've been brothers to us forever. Danny is the most metal guy in the world. John Connolly is just nuts. Glenn, he's still pounding.
Love those guys, man.
SOD's awesome, just heavy, great mix of hardcore and thrash.
To this day, some of the heaviest riffs I've ever heard in my life.
I mean, for God's sake, you'd never heard a guitar sound like that, you know? Metallica had the crunch, but SOD had the mega crunch.
I mean, the opening riff for, you know, March is just like, oh my God, you know? I mean, dude, you can feel that coming from 3 blocks away, you know? And as soon as you hear it, it makes something in your bones just go,
SOD was genius because it was so fuck the world, and you know, and they had the good, you know, Scotty and Anthrax guitar sound, you know, with the hardcore elements and the thrash beats.
It was completely influenced by what I was listening to at the time, whether it was DRI or Corrosion of Conformity or Suicidal or Discharge or Agnostic Front or any of this hardcore stuff that I loved hardcore music so much. I really didn't have an outlet for it in Anthrax, and that's where SOD was born. And then I called Danny Leclercq, who was the original bass player in Anthrax, and said, you know, you want to work on this thing with me? I've got this idea. And then I had already written 10 songs, and he came in and we did 10 more songs, and that was it.
They handed it to Marsha, and then Marsha one day we're riding, and Marsha says, Johnny, check this out. And, you know, she puts it on, and it blew my brains right out of the back of my head, and she knew it would. It was just so perfect.
Wow, one of the most defining records for me in that whole genre. It's just, you know,
the sheer brutality of it all mixed in with the precision metal and just.
And mosh parts from hell.
Mosh. They got everybody moshing, the whole Milano mosh kind of thing, you know?
Just middle finger in your face with like huge riffs behind it, you know?
And huge Billy Milano in front.
Like this band Agnostic Front and another band Murphy's Law were playing together at one of the hardcore matinees at CBGB's, and we're like, look, we got to go to this show. We'll just walk in, we'll stand towards the back, and if anyone hassles us, we'll just run. We'll just get the hell out of there as fast as we can. And one of the first people I met walking in there that day was Billy Milano, who ended up becoming the singer of SOD. He's this big, muscular, bulky skinhead guy comes walking up to me, and I'm like, that's it, I'm dead.
Billy Milano and SOD have a lot to do with bringing the heavy metal crowd to this new reality of music.
And SOD, you know, opened my mind to punk rock and hardcore.
SOD could have been the biggest metal band
They
in
were
history.
the contender.
They were the true contender for the M-word throne.
It took on a life of its own, and it really, I know it influenced a lot of people because I hear the riffs constantly, even still now on, you know, new metal bands' records. Like you can just hear it straight up. Oh, look, that's March of the SOD again, you know. So, but I love that, and I'm extremely proud of it.
Billy Milano, who was in SOD, went on to form MOD as a full-time band.
MOD was an influence the same way that SOD is. I grouped them together because I love Billy Milano's voice, and I get the same thing out of both bands.
The music, you know, was kind of like SOD. The lyrics were very, you know, comical, and, you know, they were controversial, just like SOD was.
I like the energy that stuff had, like USA for MOD, and they weren't afraid to say whatever they felt like.
I think Billy kind of brought the tongue-in-cheek. He kind of brought the, you know, as funny as he was as a frontman, you know, just kind of not really caring, you know. He also was kind of just willing to just go above and beyond and just beat the hell out of himself, you know. So he was a great frontman.
And that guy's a fucking maniac, Billy Milano, you know what I mean?
Billy Milano has a really unique attitude and just a really unique sound to his voice. He just, he's high intensity. He's got like a fuck you attitude. He's awesome.
Prong was a very unique metal band for their time. They had an industrial type sound to them, which was different. They weren't like Anthrax. They weren't like Overkill. They had an industrial type sound. They were pretty big at one time. They were on Epic Records. They had some success.
I remember I saw them in Tampa at the Masquerade playing with somebody, and they were so heavy. Yeah. And like I hadn't really heard that kind of sound before. They were kind of innovative. You know what I mean? It was like real precise stuff, and it was like crushing. I thought it was killer.
They were really good. I had Beg to Differ, and I listened to a lot of songs on that for a couple of years. That was a huge album influence for me.
And I think, you know, Carnivore was probably, you know, for us, the most influential band that mixed, you know, metal, hardcore, and thrash.
I definitely consider Carnivore to be a crossover band, no question. They had a lot of hardcore, and they had a lot of just New York. Like, you just listen to that, you think of New York, no matter what.
New York sound, attitude.
Great. Very politically incorrect.
I saw that
very
a few times
pissed
at
off.
Lamar.
Yet, I actually love that band. It's a great band.
I know me and Jeff seen Carnivore. I don't know if you went to that show. It was down in, or probably were staying in Metal Joe's place, and Carnivore was playing somewhere. And I remembered that till like a year or two ago. They re-released that Carnivore CD. I'm like, gotta have it. Because all I remember was, Carnivore, I'm a meat eater. Like, I gotta relive that.
Carnivore is one of my biggest personal musical influences because they were just so offensive and they just did not give a fuck about anything. It's just so awesome. They just say the things that everybody was afraid to say and like not even thinking, but just loved hearing something so
Why
offensive.
are all the one-word names for bands taken up that are totally awesome?
World Wars 3 and 4 is the name of one song. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
I remember the first Waste tour
Ryan stole a Carnivore record out of it.
I stole a Carnivore record in Idaho, or Iowa.
He was waiting for it was like 15 minutes. He was walking around with this record, and he was like, he didn't want to buy it. They were charging like $20 for it or something shitty.
I put it in a
And he
piece
was
of
like-
newspaper and just walked out. Like I had a paper in my hand.
It was one of those weekly newspapers
retaliation.
he put
That's
it
a
in and
great
walked out.
Carnivore record.
Whiplash are a New Jersey thrash band. Released Power and Pain. That was their debut record. Great thrash metal.
Oh, we were just that's funny. Yeah, we were just listening to Whiplash on the way over here.
Power and Pain's
Power
a
and
good
Pain,
album.
man. That's a good release there.
Whiplash's Power and Pain is totally essential. Awesome band, and incredible energy and speed, and really upped the quality of thrash metal back in 1985.
They had one guitar player. The drummer actually went on to play in Slayer for a little bit, Tony Scaglione. But they were really good. I mean, all-out thrash metal with the name Whiplash. You knew what you were going to get.
The vocal style, set them apart a bit, I think.
Yeah,
they had that
very unique.
distinct style there.
They were like one of the early bands, so they had that like authenticity or whatever, and they were really, really fucking good.
Just real straightforward, raw, pissed off, thrash, and it's good, man.
I saw Whiplash at a New Jersey Metal Fest. It was a reunion show. It was before the thrash resurgence, and I was definitely blown away by that band. They all had short hair, so I wasn't expecting much because I have this thing where I like when thrash bands have long hair, and they're just, I don't know. But they were
If you
some
have
of the
short hair,
tightest.
sorry, if you have short hair, you better bring it. Go ahead.
This band surprised me more than any band at that one fest. I was there to see a lot of black metal bands, and Whiplash was the band I remembered the most.
Flotsam and Jetsam was one of these bands that was really starting to make a name for themselves in the Phoenix area. And again, due to the homegrown nature of how the movement worked, they were starting to get a pretty good buzz. I think they may have been signed to Metal Blade Records. And so I remember going out and playing with them, doing shows with them at this little place called the Mason Jar in Phoenix. And I mean, it up until just recently, it's been the standard little dive club that everyone hated, but we all played there.
Flotsam and Jetsam, another Arizona band. That was Jason Newsted's first band. And Doomsday for Deceiver is a fantastic album.
Yeah, Doomsday Deceiver, man. Flotsam and Jetsam. That's a cool album. Speed metal, high vocals.
Brian Slagle, I remember the first time he played them for me, was out in LA. I don't know, we were cruising on, I don't know, Sunset Boulevard or something, and he was playing the first album, Doomsday for the Deceiver, for me, and that really blew me away. Again, great production. I liked the vocals quite a bit, kind of set them apart.
Once Doomsday for the Deceiver came out, you had these long songs with a singer with high voice, Eric A.K., and they made no mistake, they made no qualms that they were a thrash band.
Great songwriting, great structures. Jason Newsted really shows his bass playing abilities on that album. A must-have. It was just re-released by Metal Blade, remastered with a bunch of bonus tracks.
They were definitely part of, I think, kind of the second wave of bands that were starting what they were, starting, to move the thrash thing forward. So it was interesting when Jason, got the gig in Metallica, because he was really this passionate fan. Great bass player.
Flotsam and Jetsam is one of those bands where you can put it on and just kind of get lost in the music. It's like really long songs, really progressive, really technical, just really good, like artistic kind of,
They were one of the many bands that were on Metal Blade that were signed to Major. No Place for Disgrace was the debut on Elektra. Then they were signed to MCA. Band has lost a few members over the years in terms of members quitting, members moving on to different bands. But yeah, Flotsam and Jetsam still going strong to this day.
Sacred Reich, Arizona thrash band, great group. They recently reformed to do some festival shows. First couple of records are classic in my opinion.
That was one of my first signings at Metal Blade. I was drawn not only to their name, but the heaviness of their music. They're a 4-piece with real political lyrics. I mean, the album cover had a plane crashing with like a hostage on the cover. It was called Ignorance. And the first song was called Death Squad. I mean, it was just this real Slayer-esque riff, really, really heavy. And I was really happy to work with them.
They were different lyrically than a lot of the bands were. They sang about some social issues. It wasn't about like the devil or everything else that was going on at that time that a lot of bands were singing about. They had their war songs like Surf Nicaragua. They weren't really happy with people going off to war and so on. I think their mascot portrayed that. The guy with the gas mask on, that was definitely telling you something right there.
I liked it because it had a true sense of anger behind it. That's what was cool to me.
It was intelligent, conscious thrash, man. That's great. Get political, man. And as long as you rip, that's fine.
Their follow-up release, Surf Nicaragua, was the EP. That got a lot of press, got a lot of recognition. They toured a lot. And they built a really, really strong fan base.
They were surfing Nicaragua, man.
Yeah, they were like kind of like almost a hardcore band in a way, but they had just a whole nother element to them, like a little Slayer, a little bit like Agnostic Front, that brought them like to a totally different level.
They're also like, I think maybe one of the first bands where their fans, it was like a, like the New York death metal thing, like a scene, like their fans, like hardcore bands are now. Where if you're into that band, you're part of a thing. Sacred Reich fans way back then used to like have that kind of mentality a little bit. I think
The first tour we ever did, actually United States tour, we opened up for Sacred Reich, and they taught us the ropes. They taught us everything about touring and being on the road and trying to survive.
The American Way was out. I was at the show. I think they played with Sepultura actually, and those were two of my all-time favorites. I love Sacred Reich.
I got to interview Phil from Sacred Reich in the UK. So I got to meet him, and we talked about the fact that we were both named Phil and play bass in thrash metal bands. And then he told me about his kids and his, so he's a grown-up now, so. But his band ruled.
The Arizona scene had 3 big bands. You had Flotsam and Jetsam, you had Sacred Reich, and Atrophy. Atrophy put out a couple of records. They were decent, high energy, thrash similar to Exodus. Socialized Hate was their first record, really, really good. The Arizona scene, I thought would produce more bands, being that the weather was so hot that these bands would just channel all this heat and just go out and get instruments and just thrash out. But those 3 bands were the keys that came out of there.
Florida, I think, kind of leapfrogged the thrash metal movement largely. I don't remember many thrash bands because already by 1985, the early bands that were forming, like Hellwitch and Death, and like Executioner, who became Obituary, they were more already trying to do something more extreme and gruesome. So they definitely took inspiration from Slayer, but it was really more like a crude death metal thing already.
I like Nasty Savage. They were a Florida group. Nasty Ronnie was almost a professional wrestler, but he's also a heavy metal singer.
Of course, Nasty Savage, the classic underground metal band of the 80s, whose demo tapes spread like some type of fungus all the way across the world.
Huge influence on everybody that's from our area too, because back then Nasty Savage and Sabotage got record deals, and back then record deals were like these mythical things. Oh my God, they got signed, because it just seemed like an impossible thing to do, but they did it.
Nasty Savage.
Nasty Savage. Nasty Ronnie.
Gladiator.
Yeah, Ben Meyer, really good guitarist, man.
And how extreme they were too. Like on the album cover, the back cover of Nasty Savage's record had like Curtis with the flames that were coming out and stuff. And you see that in the album, and you just knew it was going to be badass. The record was just going to be sick.
Fucking Indulgence, Abstract Reality.
Their
after
first
the first one,
self-release.
yeah. So cool fucking band.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Just,
very
amazing.
original.
I was in a thrash band in like 1987 called Sacrosanct, and we had a gig that we were opening for Slayer on like their Rain and Blood tour. And at the last minute, Slayer canceled, but Nasty Savage stepped in as the headliner. And all my friends were like, "Oh, you must be so bummed because Slayer fucking canceled." We're like, "Fuck that, Nasty Savage, you kidding me?" But nobody knew him, so that was cool that nobody really knew who they were, and we were totally excited.
Nasty Savage was a big part of just the attitude. They were kind of like Paul Bailoff from Exodus, whose attitude was so important in like defining or like giving people like a sense of freedom and just craziness.
Nasty Ronnie, an amazing vocalist, a stage performer, even though some people gave him crap for it back in the day, more specifically Billy Milano. Really hated Nasty Ronnie because he brought, I guess, like a stage performance to a thrash show.
Nasty Ronnie with his big breastplate, smashing TVs on his chest. He got all that stuff from wrestling, you know, but it's funny that then the breastplate lived on. Morbid Angel and Deicide, lead singers used to use breastplates too. It's obviously a great tribute to the mighty Nasty Ronnie.
They didn't really make an impact, but they were a quality group. To me, that was the most important part of the second bands that the big four anyone could grasp onto. But the bands that were below that really, in my opinion, kept thrash metal going. They were slugging it out in the clubs. They were touring in vans. They weren't really making any money. But when you're young, you can relate to that because you're not making any money either where you're working really. So you're able to relate to the ethics of what these bands were trying to do, slugging it out in the clubs, making great records that unfortunately they didn't go far, but it was quality music.
Bands like Hallows Eve, they first appealed to me because they seem like they might be like King Diamond or Merciful Fate. Our image in Rebel Celsius Grinder is really inspired by King Diamond, Merciful Fate. We're just crazy about that shit. But Hallows Eve fits into that for me. It's like the whole like Hallows Eve, just creepy horror story thing, but like also satanic and kick-ass.
I picked up their album in a store. I saw the cassette tape, and just from the cover again, it was another band that I just was like, wow, this is different. Who the heck knows what they sound like? And when I got it, I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
One of the things about Hallows Eve that I liked a lot was it seemed like, I'm talking about the album Monument right now, it seemed like the drums and the vocals matched up so much. Like there was a really rhythmic element to the vocals, but they were really catchy sing-along choruses, and even the verses were very sing-along. It was like the drums and the vocals were so loud, the guitars were a little bit quiet, but that was cool to hear like a strong rhythmic force of thrash.
When we were little kids, we were down at the Jersey Shore, and we were just at the boardwalk, and we were just like little metal kids, just like we started to listen to like, you know, Metallica and all that stuff at that point. And we went to this pizza place, and the guy just like gave us pizza, and he like realized that we like listened to metal, and he was like, "You guys ever hear of a band called Hallows Eve?" And we were like, "Yeah." And he was just like, "I played drums in that band." And we just sat there for like a couple hours just talking to the drummer from Hallows Eve. And then we all went out and got the Hallows Eve stuff, and we're like, "Yeah, this band rules."
Metal church from the Northwest. Yeah, there was Reil. Yeah, there was Queensryche. But Metal Church, name says it all.
Metal Church, besides having the greatest name ever, in my opinion, for a group, Metal Church are not really a thrash metal band. I mean, they have songs that have a thrash metal sound, but they're not really considered thrash. They're not like Exodus. They kind of remind me of Metallica around Ride the Lightning, when Metallica was mixing in the slower songs and not playing as fast as they were on Kill 'Em All.
I didn't listen to him for so long, and then when I joined the band, Ryan would play it all the time, and I got stoked.
First album, man.
Yeah, it's totally excellent.
Great heavy metal band, great thrash band, just good songwriting. Great name, Metal Church, come on.
If you're calling yourself Metal Church, you better deliver. And they definitely did that on their debut release. It's one of those releases that every song was good.
Seemed like Metal Church didn't have the super insane velocity of some thrash metal bands, but it was good, you know. That album, especially the first one, is just amazing. The songwriting is amazing. The hooks and the drumming is badass.
Kurt Vanderhoof was a driving force in that band. He wrote a good portion of the lyrics and all the music. You know, David Wayne, rest in peace. Great singer, great dual leads, and good writing. I definitely remember the dark They were signed to Elektra. That was a record that they were signed to Elektra on. And this was, 86 was the same year Cliff was killed. And I definitely remember Watch the Children Pray was the single from that release. And when that record came out, I often related the Metal Church single with Cliff's dying.
I saw Metal Church open for Metallica one time at a big outdoor festival, and it was badass. I mean, they had the Badlands video on Headbangers Ball back when like Ricky had long hair and all that, and that's what pretty much turned me on to Metal Church. Then when I saw them, I was blown away.
The reason you have to have a lot of respect for Metal Church is they, when British bands were the biggest metal bands in the world, they put the U.S. on the map with really high energy, kind of their own take on really high, falsetto singing, and added like an American kick-ass attitude to it.
I got a 30-minute blowjob. Listen to that. A 7-minute song. Was it The Estranged? There's like an instrumental.
Don't look at me, dude. I wasn't giving you the blowjob.
Anthem of the Estranged. I was on mushrooms getting a blowjob, and I thought that song was 30 minutes long. But apparently it was a 7-minute blowjob. Great band, Metal Church.
The Seattle area, I think it's a bad rap as like some type of anti-metal zone, but historically they've always had very good idiosyncratic bands. It's true today. In the thrash times, they gave us The Accused, Forced Entry, Mace, Sanctuary. Their album was produced by Dave Mustaine. They had a little run on Epic Records. Not really a household name, but pretty well known, and they evolved into Nevermore, revered musically. From down nearby in Portland, bands that came up and played a lot, you had Wehrmacht and Sweaty Nipples and Spastic Blur. I think outside of Texas thrash doesn't really have the same ring. It doesn't have the same reputation as German thrash or San Francisco thrash. But how many other states can boast a laundry list of bands like Rigor Mortis, Agony Column, Devastation, Rotting Corpse, Watchtower, and of course DRI, and then all leading to Pantera.
DRI was like, one of the first to really, I think, get it, accepted in both scenes, where you had kids showing up to the shows with, skinheads, kids with mohawks, but also metalheads and hardcore kids. I mean, even straight edge kids.
Well, DRI, I think, was coming from, originally was a real hardcore punk band, and they became Thrashed, and I think they alienated a lot of their original fans who really were more into punk, but they gained all these new metal fans.
Yes, there were some people that did not like the fact that we crossed over into thrash and wish that we would have stuck with just straight hardcore.
Slayer first turned me on to DRI, and then after that, we signed DRI, and it was really the first punk band that was on a metal label at the time as well.
Slayer, I remember very distinctly, was saying in their metal interviews, well, if you think we're fast, you should see DRI.
DRI was probably responsible for more metal bands playing fast or faster than any other band, because they were setting the standard at the time for really short, fast songs, and everybody wanted to be like DRI, including us.
The short songs and the intensity, and they have a lot of cool sing-along stuff too, which I think they always had the crowd involvement.
They were the ultimate. They put out an album called Crossover.
DRI had their album called Crossover, which was they were talking about the times that were to come, and sure enough, it did.
Yeah, they were definitely the band that made it okay for punk bands to start playing metal. There was always the
line. Scene, like long hairs coming to shows, and
yeah,
I mean there was fighting for a while, between punks, skins, long hairs, and they kind of set the tone for this is okay. We can all rock out to this music, and that's kind of what Crossover. That's the album touched on.
That's definitely what this band lives by.
And that's kind of what we do. We get compared to DRI every day, and that's cool with me, man, because they really were groundbreaking as far as that goes. Yeah. So cheers to DRI, Spike. Get well, man.
So there you go. There is Get Thrashed around the world and around the U.S. Hope you guys, discovered some new bands. Maybe again you were reminded of why you loved those bands to begin with. Maybe there's a band you hadn't heard of in a long time, and that our little bonus features here reminded you to go back and take a listen to a band like Atrophy, new album is great, or Assassin, or Forced Entry, or some of these really deep underground bands. Listen, we can never get everybody's favorite band in, even with 4 hours of bonus features. But hopefully this is a trip down memory lane for some of you. Hopefully this is, again, an educational experience where some of you younger kids out there can find out about some of these bands that were really important. And also, shout out a little bit, sorrowful looking back and seeing like Frank and Ralph, who were playing in Obituary at the time I interviewed them, are no longer with us. And Dane from Sanctuary and then Nevermore, no longer with us. So it's, tough looking back 15 years, 16 years, some of these interviews took place a long time ago. And, a lot of these guys are no longer with us. So, much respect to them. And again, thanks guys for checking out Get Thrashed, the film. Thank you for checking out Get Thrashed, the bonus features. All right? See you in the pit.